Sure, like that. Looks good to me, man. I don't know if I have to edit out North Face, but whatever.
No, you could always put a blur over it.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
All right. Could you please give me your name, age, occupation, drug of choice, and time in recovery for the record? I don't even put it in the film.
Yeah. My name is Luke Talbot. I'm 33 years old. I work as a chef, and my clean date is July 10th of 2007.
Cool. All right. Would you mind giving me, a brief summary of your story, kind of active addiction and how you got clean and some high points of recovery?
Yeah. Well, I kind of grew up in a normal household. Mom and dad stayed together. I had a bunch of brothers and sisters. My father worked really hard. He owned an Irish pub and was a vice president loan officer of a bank. So I was kind of born like a spoiled rich kid. And, I'd see the adults kind of having their parties and stuff, and they'd stay up all night. And, so I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I guess my dad's an admitted alcoholic. He's been sober for, I think around 20 years now, 19 years. But, when I was a kid, yeah, I saw drinking and partying and stuff. No drugs or anything. But, I don't know, something kind of inside me told me that it was kind of something to stay away from. It wasn't really something I actively sought out. When kids at school were starting to get loaded, I kind of just didn't really follow that whole, crowd. I don't know. I mean, I was a little asshole. I got in trouble. I got arrested. I had a ton of fun, but I didn't really mess around with any kind of substances, until one day I did. And, I smoked some weed in the back of a limo on the way to a concert. And, I don't know, man, when it hit me, I kind of, I knew that my contempt prior to investigation on the subject of getting high, it was completely off, man. I mean, getting high was pretty good. It was wonderful. I laughed a lot, and I knew I wanted to do it again as soon as I could. So, after the show, we got back in the limo, and I got high again. And, I don't know, man. All through high school, I kind of just smoked weed. I mean, I did a little acid and stuff. But I didn't really drink. I don't know, it just seemed like anybody that was drinking was like some douchebag football player that I just didn't really want to be associating with, and wasn't really in my circle. I eventually tried it. I eventually really liked it. I kept drinking. I don't know. And then, everybody else was going off to college and doing stuff, and I was just kind of hanging out in basements, playing video games, getting into trouble, not really doing too much with my life. So, I think that would probably be the first, signpost that, what I was doing wasn't really getting me anywhere. But the thing about it is I really didn't care. I was kind of having a lot of fun with it, and I thought it'd be a good idea to keep going. So I did. And, as you get older, scenes change, friends change, drugs changed. You turn 21 and I don't know, now there's coke around, and, I tried that a whole bunch and really enjoyed that. Kind of got to the point where if there wasn't going to be any coke in the evening, I wouldn't really even start drinking. Just kind of went hand in hand for me. Eventually, everybody started doing, everybody was just crazy over these OxyContin things, and again, kind of like when I was a little kid, something told me just to stay away from it. It wasn't anything I wanted to be a part of. The people I saw doing that kind of stuff were ending up in jams that I really didn't want to end up in. But I don't know, 22nd birthday, wicked high, very drunk, crashed into a telephone pole, hospital, pills. I eventually learned that I was wrong about that too, man. I mean, opiates are, when I found those, it was kind of like my search was over. I didn't really want to do anything else. I mean, I'd still drink a little here, smoke a little pot there, but it was pretty much all opiates. I look back and, I'd love to blame all the trouble in my life on drugs and be like, oh, it was the drugs, but I don't know, man. I mean, life overall has been pretty fair to me. I've had a lot of opportunities, a lot of which I've wasted. It wasn't the drugs, it wasn't the situations, it wasn't the job, it wasn't the girl. I mean, if I look back at anything in my life that I'm unhappy with, it was my fault, And, when I got to a point in my life where, I really wasn't willing to put up with the consequences of getting loaded anymore, I kind of had to take a look at that and, put the big boy pants on and, take responsibility for my life. If I'm unhappy with the results that I'm getting, then I got to make better decisions. And if I make better decisions, I get positive consequences in my life. If I want to, make a bunch of excuses and, blame it on work, blame it on the girl, blame it on, God not being fair to me, then, I'm really, I'm just denying responsibility. And, I find when I do that, my headspace doesn't end up anyplace good. Today, if I have a problem, I look at it and I say, well, is there anything I can do to change it? And if the answer is yes, which 90% of the time it is, what am I doing wasting time bitching about it? I can put the effort in to fix it, or I can leave it alone. But, at the end of the day, ever since I decided to quit getting high and take responsibility for my life's gone in a bunch of different directions. Some stuff's been really awesome. Some stuff has really sucked. But the stuff that sucked, I have nobody to blame for it but myself. And the same goes true for the stuff that's really good. If I'm living the way I know I should be, then I can take a look at that and feel okay about it. It's been a process, for a long time I had like a lot of troubles with work, I could go in, I could do a good job, I could make money, but I would always act like an asshole and get in fights with people, and then I wouldn't have a job. So, the whole taking responsibility thing, nowadays I'm a little more diplomatic, and I say what I feel without being confrontational, and I get better results. And I'm holding down jobs now that last years instead of weeks. So does not getting high have anything to do with that? I really think it does, because I don't know, I just couldn't really see what I couldn't see when I couldn't see it. But once you know, you can't not know. So if I don't take care of the thing that I have, then my life doesn't work. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right. These are the next couple are about the rest are about they're all opinionated. they're all about your opinion on whatever. Anyways, what do you think some of the environmental factors are that contribute to this problem specifically on Cape? Because our numbers are a little worse than really the rest of the country.
Yeah.
So yeah, environmental factors.
Well, things on Cape Cod are a little strange as far as all right, so in the summertime on Cape Cod, there's, just hundreds of thousands of people, and everybody comes down here to, party and spend money and, have their vacation. And so for 2.5 months out of the year, everybody around here is just living the American dream, man. Money's flowing, booze is flowing, there's going to be drugs around anywhere, but you get this huge party for 2.5 months out of the year, and then there's a little trickle over in the spring and a little trickle over in the fall, but for the most part, I think the most common complaint that you'll hear amongst young people is there's nothing to do on Cape Cod. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think there's a ton of stuff to do that's positive as long as you're properly motivated. But I don't know, today, man, it's all about sitting inside and playing video games and not going outside and doing stuff, or parents that are working 2 jobs to make ends meet that don't have time to cultivate their children properly and point them in the right direction. So you get all these kids with a TV for a babysitter that grow up with a huge party every summer, and it's a fact of life. Invariably, everybody's going to get that choice. Like, would you like to get loaded? No, I wouldn't, or yes, I would. I think most people test the waters with it, and I think a lot of people find a lot of fun with it. Me personally, I believe that there's just something inside of me that I can't just have a little bit of fun with it. I got to take the ball and run with it. But normal people too, man. It's the kind of thing where you're going to be faced with that decision: am I going to get loaded or am I not? And I think the people that choose to take the ball and run with it, I think they use boredom as an excuse and say there's nothing to do on Cape Cod in the winter or even in the summer, and they just keep chasing that party. It sucks too, because it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. I feel really fortunate to have grown up here. And I feel really fortunate to be able to enjoy everything that this place has to offer. And I look back and I'm kind of regretful that I wasted so much time just dicking off, I like to think I could have avoided my situation. I don't think I could have. I think I had to go through what I had to go through to get to where I had to go. But it's kind of like a black hole, man. People get together and they get loaded and they form these little cliques, and that's what you do on Saturday night. And it's just tough. You want better for people, but I think generally people just blame it on boredom and a lack of stuff to do.
Might be a good idea. See where the 2 wires connect?
Yep.
Grab that and throw it in your pocket, if you don't mind. Where your hands are. That way you're not worried about it.
Mm.
No, that's somebody else. Oh, really?
Oh, that's tremendous.
You got that on tape.
Oh,
fuck. I hope that doesn't happen a lot. All right. What's your opinion of nature versus nurture? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think it's genetic, bad parenting. What do you think's going on?
Yeah. I mean, as far as the whole nature versus nurture argument, I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that somebody can have a perfectly normal life or a really tragic, messed up life. You know, opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, find booze, recreational weed, you know, some of the more socially acceptable drugs. And, you know, some people take it, some people leave it. But, you know, then you go further down the road, you know, I mean, maybe there's life circumstances, divorce, job loss, something like that, where like a problem drinker might develop out of like a seemingly normal person. And is that person an alcoholic? I don't know. That wasn't really my story. Could they go through a bad patch and go back to successfully just having a couple with the boys after work? I don't know. That wasn't really my story. I've seen that work for some people. I don't know how happy they are or how fulfilling their lives are. But it's really not up to me to judge anybody else, as long as, you know, a person is happy with what their choices are and what they're doing. I'm not gonna label them, you know, an addict or an alcoholic because I may have seen them in a meeting once or twice, and then, you know, I see them at a restaurant having a beer. I mean, that's kind of a personal choice. I was told that the admission of powerlessness as far as substance was concerned is solely my choice to, you know, make the admission of or not. In my case, I chose to. I don't believe I can have just one of anything. But then there's like the flip side of that coin. I think with things like dope or heroin or whatever you want to call it, I think if you take a completely normal person that might have zero genetic predisposition to addiction and you pump them full of it for a month and a half while they're in the hospital, I think they're going to come out of the hospital physically addicted to it. So, you know, I've heard the argument that, oh, you know, pot's not physically addictive, or it's only a psychological addiction or whatever. I mean, it's kind of splitting hairs, in my opinion. I can tell you that at a couple points in my lifetime, I couldn't function without weed. I mean, it was pretty much all I was doing, and my life didn't make sense unless I was high. So, you know, I mean, my dad was an alcoholic. I'm whatever I am. I can't use in safety. I don't use at all. So, do I think I was genetically predisposed? Yeah, I do. But, you know, I know that you can become addicted to something that you like very much, having no genetic predisposition, because I've seen that happen too. Like I said, I don't know anybody else's story, but I think if you do anything long enough, and you like it and you keep running with it, whether you're genetically predisposed or not, it's something that needs to be taken care of. My whole thing is, it really doesn't matter to me how I got here. It makes absolutely no difference, but what matters is what I'm going to do now that I know it's a problem. Am I going to feed into it and mess my life up, or am I going to do whatever it is I need to do to maintain complete and total abstinence and have a shot at a life? So, you know, nature versus nurture. Shit, man, I think if you separated identical twins at birth and gave them drastically different situations and exposed them to the same level of drug abuse, I don't think the situation would really matter. The whole thing with drug addiction is it kind of takes on a life of its own, and once it sinks its teeth in, until you make a choice to stop it, you're pretty much along for the ride. You don't have much control at that point. So yeah, that's about what I got on that.
Works for me. Do you think that the way that the justice system works right now, I've heard statistics as high as 90% of inmates self-identify as addicts or alcoholics. Do you think we should start gearing it towards some kind of treatment, or do you think that just letting people get better in jail, kind of sweep them under the rug for a little while, hope they come out better works? What's your opinion on the way the justice system is working now with addiction?
Yeah. As far as, treating drug addiction as like a criminal offense, basically, it's, I don't know that, in my opinion, the direction that our country goes in terms of dealing with that problem is the most effective. It's kind of like, if you throw somebody in jail because they like to get loaded, I think they can pretty much figure out a way to continue getting loaded in jail, and then they get back out and they continue to get loaded, and then they do some dumb shit that causes them to get arrested, and then they go back to jail. I don't know that that's necessarily, all that helpful. Especially, I don't know, I see all this stuff about like jail now, and it's a lot of private entities that are like for profit. And, I guess if it's good business, keep doing it, but it doesn't seem to be producing the kind of individuals that society, deems desirable. I don't know that I have a better suggestion for dealing with it on a large scale. Through my own experience, I've found that, you can yell at me and tell me I have a problem, you can lock me up, you can send me to rehab, you can, make me go to meetings every day. But until I went through the amount of self-imposed agony I had to go through to get to a place where I was willing to do something differently, I don't know that I was going to stop. And how do you make somebody have that experience? I guess if I knew the answer to that, I'd, have my own treatment center in some exotic location where I could be making lots of money off of people that wanted to have that experience and find a better life. But I don't know that we're ever going to find it, man. I mean, I think dealing with addiction, I don't know, there's like some fellowships and stuff that I hear work pretty well, that are voluntary, that if people are having a problem and they want to do something differently, I heard they can find their answers there. I know a bunch of people that have. But in terms of just locking somebody up for getting loaded, hey man, if you're going to get loaded, you're going to get loaded. So, do what you're going to do. But, when I see a statistic like we spend $40,000 a year on your average inmate, and you only spend $8,000 a year on your average, school student, it's like, where are we putting our priorities as a country? I think a better plan would be, investing in youth. That $40,000, if you spent it on a kid, you buy him a flute, you buy him a guitar, you buy him a full hockey outfit, and you make sure his time's occupied when he's young, and push him in a different direction where they don't have the idle hands that are, the devil's playground. You might get kids more active in becoming, productive members of society. I'm not necessarily sure that that's what they want. I kind of think that they want, a mindless sheeple kind of population. So if that's what they're going for, locking people up for getting loaded seems to fit in pretty good. So.
Oh man, that works. The reason I laughed when you said treatment center, I was calling it in my own head. I was like, he's gonna say he's gonna open his own.
Oh yeah, man. Everybody else is making money. Why not me?
Yeah. If you're an addict, which you are, I feel like you personally were treated fairly by law enforcement, clinicians, your family. Were you treated fairly?
As far as the way the outside world treated me when I was in the grips of addiction, I'd have to say that I got exactly what was coming to me. If I'm going to go out on the town and break some stuff and drive around inebriated, I would expect that the police would have a problem with that. And, I'm kind of regretful that I behaved in that fashion. So every night I got locked up and thrown in the drunk tank or had to go to court. Yeah, I had that coming. As far as losing the respect and admiration of my family, I would imagine that if somebody did the kinds of things to me that I was doing to them, I would feel pretty similarly. I'd feel hurt, betrayed. I'd feel like, come on, man, I show you all the love in the world, and I'm always there for you, and all I get is this vacant shell of a human being that wants to live in my house for free and eat all my food and not have to pay for toothpaste or toilet paper. I'd feel pretty put out. So I gotta say, my parents finally cutting me off was probably the most helpful thing in me actually getting clean, sober, whatever you want to call it. As far as how I was treated by healthcare staff, I get it that if they see somebody with with drug-seeking behavior in a hospital room, they're probably pretty stressed out and don't really want to deal with some junkie just looking for pills. So I get that, that I was a nuisance as far as that was concerned. So I guess I can empathize with them on kind of treating me like a lowlife, because if I look honestly at how I was living, I was kind of a lowlife. So, yeah, if you're an active junkie or an active booze bag or whatever your thing is, prepare to get treated like shit and judged by society, because that's kind of how they see us. And, honestly, if I'm going to be really honest, where I am now, a good portion of my life revolves around, nice, normal, wholesome, lovely, wonderful, productive things. I have children. I've got a pretty decent job. I participate in society. And honestly, man, I would be lying if I said that I didn't kind of look down a little bit on people that are in a situation that I was once in. I feel a little bit bad about it, but it's really hard to have sympathy for people when you get to a place where I know that was all my own fault. Nobody was making me get loaded. It was really hard to stop, but every time I got loaded, it was a conscious decision I made. So since I was doing it to myself, I kind of see other people, they're doing it to themselves, and you would hope that they would give themselves a shot at a better life and try and rise above the situation. But if you're not willing to, and you're driving around hammered and you might hit my child while she's on her little tricycle or something, that bothers me. So, that's kind of my opinion on that one. Hi.
Excuse me, I'm very sorry to interrupt. Are you guys doing a documentary?
Yeah. On addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
so
right.
happy to meet you. My name is Jean Mace.
Hi.
I used to own a sober house in town until I got divorced and my husband took it over.
Oh, okay. Which one?
All right, we're recording again. No, go for it, bro. This is the part I'm gonna put in the movie. You just fucking with your phone.
Oh, no shit.
What?
Ponytail drove by and said, "Chef, you're looking good in your interview. Stay strong, my friend."
Fucking Taylor?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
No shit. That's fucking great. And he's on his way to work to get fired. I feel fucking horrible.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's rough. Whatever. The kid, I don't know, man.
Did it to himself, man.
And plus, you don't want him there, man. He's not a safe worker.
No, not really.
All right. But yeah, enough of that on tape. All right. So, this is kind of two parts. First of all, do you feel like this is a disease, brain disorder, you know, malady in one's soul, whatever the fuck? What do you think? What do you think's going on?
Yeah.
Addiction, like how would you classify it?
Yeah. Well, I was introduced to a bunch of people that I was told could help me with my problem, and they informed me that what I had was a disease, and I'd hang out with them regularly, and I would find that a lot of people would constantly, oh, my disease this, or my disease that, or my disease manifests in all these areas of my life, and something about it seemed really off-putting to me. I mean, just in my heart of hearts, I couldn't see how telling yourself how sick you were every day was in some way supposed to promote good health. But, I gave it its once over, and, I try not to have contempt prior to investigation on stuff. So, I stuck it out. And, I did a little of my own research, whether it technically constitutes a disease or not. The AMA say it does, and now, I think that's cool because people can get treatment through their insurance. So I think it's important to, have that. But I don't know, man. I just, I don't know. I don't want to go through my life telling myself how sick I am every day. I'll tell you this, through my own trial and error, I have cemented in my mind that if I start, I can't stop. Somebody explained that to me, that I have physical compulsion as far as, substances are concerned. And that along with that compulsion, I also have, like a merciless mental obsession where if I break the chain somehow, if I go to detox and, do a spin dry or whatever, and, put a few days together, I've got this obsession that will lead me back around to thinking that it's a good idea to get loaded some more. So, I don't know if it's a disease or not. I know I got it. But, the bomb doesn't go off if I don't light the fuse. So, if I don't put anything in my system, I don't have to deal with any of the negative consequences. So I kind of gave up a while ago trying to figure out, is it or isn't it? I stay focused on what I have to do to avoid feeling any negativity from it, and that's kind of what works for me.
Yeah, you kind of answered this one already, but do you feel like it's curable? Do you think that some way sometime you can be totally cured?
As far as there being a cure for this thing, I don't think that I will ever go back to being able to casually enjoy a beer with the Sunday football game. So in that aspect, whatever's inside me that causes me to, keep going after I start. I honestly believe that's never going to go away. My only shot at having a decent life is never to pick up the first one. That being said, as long as I do that, I know I'm going to be okay. So is the cure just staying stopped forever? I mean, if you want to call it a cure. Am I a recovering person? I actually kind of feel like I've recovered, I mean, I know that I'm one bad decision away from, being right back to where I started. But being in control of that decision gives me a lot of power. I can choose to never, ever, ever pick it up. And as long as I don't, I know I'm going to be okay. So.
Nice. All right, well, we've covered what I wanted to cover. At the end, I leave a little clause for, if there's something that you feel I missed or something else you want to talk about. This is your time, is there anything you want to let the world know?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know, can I shit all over the steps for a minute?
Absolutely. Just wait till that plane goes by.
Yeah.
It's fucking loud. I mean, I wouldn't go too far into AA or NA. But
Yeah.
if you want to say 12-step fellowships, fuck you, go for it.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean...
And, obviously don't mention any specific people.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Believe me, some people don't understand that.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, dude, like
They think this is Facebook or something.
the whole anonymity thing is like, dude, nobody gets it.
Yeah.
It's strange. Well, I don't know. The most important thing that I wish somebody had told me when I was just starting out on, the road to recovery, if you want to call it that, is, that it's a tough place to carve out a niche for yourself, I mean, if you check out some 12-step fellowships, you're going to come into contact with, maybe groups of people who really believe wholeheartedly and strongly about certain aspects of the program or the fellowship, and it can be really off-putting to some people. I've met a bunch of people that needed to not get loaded anymore that were kind of driven off by like the level of fundamentalism that I think exists in a lot of the meetings that I've checked out. So I just wish somebody told me that there's no wrong way to stay clean, that if you're having problems in your life because of substance abuse, the only way you're going to solve that is to stop and stay stopped, and that there's really no wrong way. I've heard in a meeting, work the steps or die, motherfucker, from people that had time. And I was just like blown away by that. Like, if you're new and shivering and shaking, it's like, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. How about, hey, you're doing a good job, you made it to the meeting, you want to get coffee afterwards? It's, I mean, the steps. I mean, I've done them, I've checked them out, and, they've provided me with some points to ponder to gain a greater insight on my life. But I think the most important thing to realize is that, they weren't handed down on 2 stone tablets to Moses at the top of Mount Sinai, man. I mean, in 1935, 2 guys figured out that they had a shot at beating this thing if they stuck together. And, 4 years later, they wrote a book on the subject. And so, I mean, at the time that the steps were created, nobody had more than 4 years sober. And, I'd like to think, having gone past that, I'm not where I was at 4 years. I'm not where I was at 2 years. It's a journey, and it's very personal. And I don't know. I mean, the most important thing that I did was to make friends, to find some people that I could stand, that could stand me, that would support me and encourage me, because it's a tough thing to do, man, and it's impossible by yourself. I mean, I'm sure some people have done it, but I needed camaraderie and fellowship and support, and I found mine, and that's kind of how I run my show now, dude. I try and just extend forth a hand and say, if you're having problems with substance abuse, come along with us and we'll help you with your problem. Like, no pressure. Like, if you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to pray, do whatever you got to do, but don't get loaded, man. Call me first. Yeah, I guess that's all I got.